Have you ever wondered what happens when humans drain a wetland spanning tens of square kilometers? In Israel, that question once became a reality. Just a few years after the Hula Valley was drained, more than 22 square miles of wetlands vanished. A place that once welcomed over 1 billion migratory birds each year turned into a lifeless dead zone. But the most remarkable part isn't the collapse, it's how it was reversed. When modern technology failed, when every costly solution proved ineffective, Israel found the answer in the most unexpected place. So what had the power to revive an entire valley? Today, join Terran Works as we uncover the secret that brought the Hula Valley back to life. Located in northern Israel, between the hot, arid Golan Heights to the east and the lush forests of Upper Galilee to the west, the Hula Valley forms a fertile basin where mist, water, and vegetation blend together to create a truly unique landscape. Did you know that over 1 billion migratory birds, from cranes, pelicans, and storks to eagles, are forced to stop in the Hula Valley before continuing their 6,000 to 10,000 kilometer journey from Europe to Africa? If the hula were to disappear, the entire global migration network would be disrupted. Ironically, the Hula Valley once stood on the brink of collapse. After being drained in the 1950s, the valley sank by nearly a meter. Its 8-meter-deep peat layer dried, cracked, and then burned underground for months. A rare disaster, even on a global scale. The entire native ecosystem was nearly wiped out, turning one of the Middle East's most critical biodiversity hotspots into a literal dead zone. Today, after decades of restoration, the Hula Valley has come back stronger than anyone imagined. And the most surprising part is this. The greatest turning point began with an animal no one expected, the water buffalo. So, what is it about this species that sparked a transformation beyond the reach of modern machinery? Right now, let's visit the Hula Valley and uncover the secret behind this extraordinary revival. Before it turned into an environmental disaster, the Hula Valley was once one of the most pristine wetland ecosystems in the Middle East. Spanning more than 60 kilometers, it consisted of shallow marshes, reed beds, the 14-kilometer-square Lake Hula, and a network of natural channels that fed water into the upper Jordan River. Beneath it lay a peat layer up to 8 meters thick, accumulated over thousands of years and functioning as a giant biological memory that stored nutrients and carbon. It was also home to hundreds of animal species, including extremely rare endemics such as the hula-painted frog, once believed to be the only amphibian on Earth restricted to a single valley. Fish, water birds, otters, water snakes, and countless insects formed a complex system in which the loss of even one link could destabilize the whole. But the most important element was the sky. Every year, more than 1 billion birds from 390 species, including gray cranes, great white pelicans, egrets, and even imperial eagles, must pass through the Hula Valley. This is not by chance. It is the narrowest bottleneck of the Eurasia-Africa migration route. During just a few weeks in autumn, bird density here can reach 5,000 to 10,000 individuals per hour. With its dense wetland vegetation, nutrient-rich waters, and soft marshy fields ideal for resting, the Hula Valley was once regarded as the most important biological transit station for migratory birds in the Middle East. An irreplaceable link in an intercontinental ecological network. So why was the Hula Valley destroyed? In Israel of the 1950s, Hula was not seen as an ecological treasure, but as a useless swamp, a place plagued by malaria-carrying mosquitoes and land considered wasted. That mindset led to a fateful decision to drain the entire valley and convert it into farmland. Within a few years, more than 100 kilometers of canals were dug, the Jordan River was redirected, and the 14-kilometer-square Lake Hula, the heart of the entire ecosystem, vanished from the map. At first, everything seemed to go according to plan. The land gradually dried, thousands of hectares were designated for growing cereals and cotton, and malaria parasites dropped significantly. Israel believed it had tamed nature. but warning signs appeared almost immediately. After just a few dry seasons, the 8-meter-thick peat layer began to oxidize and shrink, causing the ground to subside by nearly a meter. Newly cultivated fields that seemed fertile turned into saline, acidic soils almost impossible to farm. And worst of all, the dried peat began to ignite underground for months at a time, releasing toxic smoke and the stench of sulfur throughout the valley. The ecosystem that once supported hundreds of species collapsed in a domino effect. The entire valley, once the biological pride of the Middle East, became, quite literally, a dead land. What seemed like a rational decision had triggered the greatest environmental catastrophe in the history of Israel's wetlands. When the disaster spiraled out of control in the late 1950s, Israel was forced to confront a bitter truth. The project to drain the Hula Valley had been a complete failure. Entering the 1960s, the government quickly launched a series of surveys and emergency measures to stabilize the valley. Additional water regulation structures were built, drainage and irrigation systems were expanded, and a range of technical interventions were implemented in the hope of reversing a situation that was worsening by the day. Yet for many years afterward, the land continued to deteriorate. Subsidence, drought, and underground smoldering fires did not disappear, revealing that the technology of the time simply was not capable of saving the Hula Valley from its downward spiral. So what ultimately saved the Hula Valley? When every technical solution had failed, Israeli experts were forced to look beyond conventional thinking. And then a proposal emerged, one that sounded more like a joke than a national strategy. Release water buffalo into the marsh. Immediately, Israel split into two opposing camps. Some scientists believed buffalo were the key, but much of the public fiercely rejected the idea. Bring an exotic animal into Israel? They'll destroy everything. A crazy idea from conservationists. Yet despite all the outrage, the first buffalo were quietly released into the dead lands of the Hula Valley. No ceremony, no publicity, just a bold experiment carried out in silence. And no one could have imagined that this moment would become the greatest turning point in the history of ecological restoration in the Middle East. Have you ever wondered why it had to be water buffalo and not any other animal? And what made them capable of single-handedly shifting the fate of the Hula Valley? The answer lies in the very biology and behavior of this nearly 1-ton creature. Studies by the Israel Nature and Parks Authority show that an adult water buffalo, weighing 600 to 900 kilograms, exerts far greater pressure than cattle. Each step compresses the peat layer, up to 8 meters deep, helping it retain moisture and preventing oxidation, something the machinery of that era simply could not achieve. As they move through the marsh, herds of buffalo carve out grooves and narrow pathways, forming natural water channels that stretch for hundreds of meters and restore the hydrological flow that artificial drainage canals had erased. Ecologically, water buffalo are almost perfect for the role of swamp engineers. A single adult can consume 25 to 30 kilograms of reeds per day, the invasive plant that had dried out hula and made it highly flammable. By clearing these reeds, the mud surface reopens, light and water return, and the conditions for native species to regenerate are restored. And then, just 3 to 5 years after water buffalo were released into the Hula Valley, the first positive signals appeared. Groundwater levels began to rise slightly, moisture in the peat layer became more stable, and the underground fires, which once burned for months every dry season, dropped sharply. Israeli engineers described this pace of recovery as many times faster than any technical model ever tested. From this point, the revival accelerated beyond anything mechanical interventions had achieved before. Within a decade, more than 1,500 hectares of cracked peat soils regained their moisture. Vast reed beds were naturally controlled, allowing native plants to return. As the environment healed, wildlife followed. Migratory bird numbers, which had nearly collapsed to zero after the 1950s, climbed to over 500,000 individuals per season by the 1990s, and by 2010 surpassed 1 million birds annually. One of the most spectacular proofs of recovery came in 2011, when the hula-painted frog, believed extinct for 62 years, was rediscovered in the very pools created unintentionally by buffalo trampling and churning the mud. The benefits even extended to agriculture. After roughly 15 years, more than 8,000 hectares of formerly saline, dried-out farmland began to regain fertility, allowing local farmers to see, for the first time, the tangible advantages of the restoration program, a result no mechanical approach had ever produced. But one big question remained. After completing their mission of reviving the Hula Valley, where would the water buffalo go? Despite delivering ecological benefits far beyond expectations, water buffalo are still considered non-native to Israel's modern ecosystem. For that reason, from the very beginning, the restoration program made one principle clear. The buffalo were only a temporary engineering team brought in to stabilize the valley during its crisis phase. Once the soil had recovered, water levels balanced out, and native species re-established their populations, Israel began gradually reducing the herd, relocating some individuals to controlled nature reserves and preventing them from expanding into nearby agricultural zones. A number of buffalo were integrated into ecological research projects, while the remaining few were kept at very low densities to continue suppressing reed overgrowth and maintaining natural water flow without influencing the valley's long-term ecological balance. In other words, the water buffalo did not disappear entirely. They entered a state of controlled retirement. They withdrew from the center of the valley and remained only as a carefully managed ecological tool. You know, the story of the Hula Valley is not unique. On the other side of the world, the United States once faced a similar environmental disaster. Dry, depleted soils, falling groundwater levels, widespread underground fires, and the disappearance of small streams. And just like in Israel, the solution for America's ecosystems did not come from technology or billion-dollar projects, but from an animal that seems completely ordinary: the beaver. Unlike water buffalo, which compress peat and reopen water pathways, beavers create entire systems of dams and ponds, natural hydraulic structures that retain water, slow its flow, increase moisture, and restore entire dried-out valleys. In states like Washington, Oregon, and Colorado, the arrival of just a single beaver family can raise local water levels several-fold, turning once dead landscapes into green wetlands within just a few years. But what astonished American scientists the most lies in the sheer scale of the change. When a beaver builds a single dam, it doesn't just create a pond, it creates an entire ecological pump that runs non-stop. Water stays in the landscape longer, seeps deeper into the ground, and restores aquifers that have been depleted for decades. In many valleys across Oregon and Colorado, people have even recorded summer temperatures dropping by several degrees simply because of the presence of a cluster of beaver ponds. American scientists call this phenomenon beaver-based restoration, a natural recovery model spreading across the country because its effectiveness far surpasses any mechanical intervention. Just like the water buffalo in Israel, beavers have become true ecosystem engineers, creating water, storing water, filtering water, and bringing wildlife back layer by layer. The story of the Hula Valley and the beaver dams of the United States reveals a simple truth that we often forget. Nature is not only a victim of human actions, it is also part of the solution. Creatures that seem ordinary, like water buffalo or beavers, possess technologies we cannot replicate. The ability to shape waterways, retain moisture, build soil, and nurture life through subtle processes refined over millions of years. When humans make mistakes, nature, if given the chance, is often the most powerful force to repair the damage. The Hula Valley once died and then came back to life. The dry valleys of America are now reviving, and that lesson matters more than ever in a world that is warming, drying, and losing its most precious ecosystems. See you on the next journey with Terran Works.